Let's go live to Paul Kelly, Editor-at-Large at the Australian newspaper. Paul, obviously so much focus on the brand stacking story out of Melbourne, the reverberations at Parliament House today, questions over Anthony Byrne, that the Deputy Chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee, involvement out of that office and so on. What's your take on where that story is right now?
Well, what we've seen, Kieran, is a spectacular factional beheading. One of the key figures in the Victorian Right. And the way this has been done and the consequences are simply going to be enormous. The ramifications for the Victorian Party and for the party nationally are going to be very significant. Now, the fundamental question at the end of the day is, will this settle down in terms of some sort of workable factional stability, and how will it alter the national balance of power between the right and the left, and whether it will strengthen the left? One of the features of Bill Shorten's leadership of the Labor Party was that he was able to contain factional tensions and factional differences, and he was able to exploit them for his own purposes in terms of the alliance that he relied upon between the right and sections of the left. The challenge facing Anthony Albanese as leader is whether he will have the same capacity for internal factional management that Bill Shorten demonstrated, or whether factional issues will become a real negative over the course of this term of Parliament.
Now, indeed, it's a big challenge for him, Daniel Andrews and so on. Let's look at the main game. As always in politics, it's the economy, and it's really increasingly going to be about the issue of jobs and unemployment, isn't it?
It is. And what we're seeing this week, Kieran, is the early skirmishing between Scott Morrison and Anthony Albanese over what is going to become a really bitter and epic political contest in Australia. Unemployment will go up to somewhere between 8 and 10%. And there are going to be two fundamental questions which will determine the result of the next election. Who is to blame and who's got the best solution? Scott Morrison made it clear this week that he envisages a 5-year economic recovery and reform agenda, and that, of course, will cover the next 2 terms. So Morrison is going to be putting forward the argument that while the role of government is critical, the coalition won't just rely on government. We've got to have a wide-ranging reform agenda which goes not just to skills and industrial relations and taxation, but which also goes to infrastructure, getting new projects up, working through the National Cabinet, getting the agreement of the Prime Minister and the Premiers in terms of fast-tracking environmental approvals. So there's a whole range of issues here, and the objective that Morrison has put on the table this week is extraordinarily ambitious. What he said is that the aim is to get the long-term growth rate up 1 percentage point above trend. Now, there are many economists who think that can't be done, but Morrison has said this will be the objective out to 2025. So there's no doubt that what he's done here is he's defined the essential purpose and meaning of the Morrison government over the next 5 years, and he's got to fill in all the bits and pieces in terms of the reform agenda to get there. Labor, of course, will campaign holding Morrison responsible for the high level of unemployment.